because nobody's done anything quite like this before. But it's funny because, like, I got the tools to learn how to do this and to get over these challenges from running a little drive-in movie theater for the last 15 years. So to me, this is sort of the beginning of the idea and the proof of concept, and I'm hoping that some content creators out there see the journey of how I created this and how this works, and they're coming out in movie theaters because I worked with I have a great distributor that totally got what I was trying to do and came on board to help get it into cinemas. And we now have over 30 states, over 150 cinemas, over 300 screenings in the United States starting on October 4th. I did it on basically no budget, just with like what I had in my savings account. But some content creators have a lot of money, and they're spending like the same amount that you'd spend making a feature film, making their content. So imagine if they use some of that money to create more of a long form piece that could then be distributed to movie theaters. Not only would it be good for the content creator, but it would be huge for the movie theaters. I would love nothing more than to have inspired that. Yes. And for people to call me up and say, help me do this, give me some advice,
Welcome to Victory Voices, where real stories fuel inspiration. This is the podcast where everyday people share extraordinary journeys of resilience, hope, and personal growth. Each episode, we dive deep into the life-changing moments that shape who we are.
I think we can start. You can start by introducing yourself, and then from there.
Sure. So my name is Josh Frank, and I am the founder and creator of the Blue Starlight Mini-Urban Drive-In Movie Theater here in Austin, Texas. I started it 15 years ago in an alleyway. Around that time, the Alamo Drafthouse still had its first original location. It wasn't spread out around the country. And I got the idea to do a movie theater. It was a passion, an idea of mine, but I knew I couldn't compete with the Alamo, which was this, really the church of cinema, not just in Austin, but to people from around the country. And I had this alleyway that I was sort of managing, which was connected to a building where I rented out studio space to artists, and I wanted to find something to do with this alleyway. And I got the idea to set up a little drive-in movie theater. At the time, the idea really was just to find a great 6-month anniversary date for me and my girlfriend at the time. And I painted a screen on the wall of this alley, and we drove up and I showed her favorite movie, Grease. And as I was sitting there in this alleyway in 2009, I realized this is a really cool experience. Why hasn't anyone done anything like this, done a drive-in in the city? So I started researching drive-ins and the history of drive-ins and why they don't exist as much anymore. Why wasn't there a drive-in within 2 hours of Austin, which I realized from doing some research. So I bought some old drive-in speakers on eBay, and I set up like what I describe as a boutique drive-in. There was enough room for about 8 cars, and I invited all my friends to bring their cars and to have a little drive-in night and see what they thought. And it was just a really cool experience, and I sort of happened upon a new movie experience that other people were not doing. And it really sort of took off, and here we are 15 years later. This is our current drive-in space. It's actually in a big open field, but I still have these mini screens, and none of the screens take more than 15 to 20 cars. And what's really cool about it is that, sure, we can show the occasional new release, but we really focus on like cult classics, and new art house movies which don't have a chance to get screens because there's so few screens left in the world. So whenever a new indie movie reaches out to us and is like, can you please show our movie? We really want to show it in Texas in at least one place. I always have a screen to offer. And that's something that I never would have imagined would be something that I could offer my community and my peers in the film distribution world. But the Blue Starlight has become known as a place that multiple generations around Austin are coming to. People from around the world, when they stop in Texas, they come here to see the Blue Starlight, and it's really cool. It's turned into something that I never imagined, but it all started in an alleyway from just buying a couple of drive-in speakers on eBay.
That's inspirational. That's inspirational. So from when you started to today, what are the challenges have you found, or what challenges have you identified on your way, and which challenges did you manage to turn into opportunities?
Well, the challenges of a drive-in have always been space. And one of the nice things about the Blue Starlight is we don't need a lot of space. As Austin has expanded and neighborhoods that once had open land that no one knew what to do with, they now have big condos on them. But the nice thing about having our drive-in basically be on wheels, if you can see, the infrastructure is all little vintage trailers. The whole drive-in is movable. So it's not like if we lose our space, the drive-in is dead forever, like most big drive-ins. You know, when they lose a space, they're done. But when we lose a space, we can pack it up and wheel it to another spot. And that was, again, something I never imagined when I opened it in this alleyway, was that because I was building the whole infrastructure using these little vintage trailers for the concession stand, for the projection booths, that it would be completely, a very movable business. And so over the years, as areas of Austin have gentrified, we have moved to different areas that are less touched by the modern world and have been able to continue our drive-in. The big thing that came up around the time of the pandemic, though, was that although the film, the cinema industry, as far as the theatrical showcasing and content, there hasn't been a lot of innovation in that. And that became painfully apparent when the pandemic hit and Hollywood stopped making new movies, and there wasn't a lot of content for cinemas, and they really suffered during this time. Now, the Blue Starlight didn't suffer in the same way because we're a drive-in. So everyone came to we were, in fact, for 8 months, we were the only cinema that was open in Central Texas because people could watch in their cars. But what was interesting is the trend that happened at other drive-ins is because they didn't have new Hollywood releases, they showed a lot of classic content. And that's always been our signature, is classic content. So although we were doing very well during the pandemic, I saw what was coming, which was that people were going to get tired of classic movies. It wouldn't be as alluring and magical as it had been before. It will always be alluring and magical to revisit classic films you love, which has always been our staple, along with new art house movies. We're actually the only drive-in in the country that shows new art house cinema. And that started during the pandemic when independent distributors were just panicked because there was no movie theaters open for the movies they were releasing that year, and they all asked us to show them, and we did. And because of that, we became before that, we really hadn't shown a lot of new art house independent films. It was all classic. But during the pandemic, we were classic and new art house. But because I saw all the other drive-ins showing classic movies, I got worried about what was going to happen to us when the pandemic ended, because I realized that some of the magic of showing these older movies was going to be kind of worn out. People are going to be tired of it. They're going to want something new when the pandemic ended. And sure enough, that's what happened. And it was around that time, though, when I saw that there would be at least 1 to 2 years post-pandemic where there just wouldn't be enough content to keep lots of people coming to all cinemas, drive-ins, indoor. And I became very passionate about the idea of it's really time to innovate what we can show in movie theaters, what content is available to us. And so I started playing around with the idea of, well, what can we as independent cinemas, which many independent cinemas have artists working at those cinemas, what can they create that could be so appealing and so intriguing and so different that it would drive people to go to a movie theater to experience something completely new. And that's where I got the idea for Silent Syncs, because I was experimenting with public domain content, old silent movies. What can you do with old silent movies that hasn't been done? And that's where I got the idea of pairing my favorite alternative rock bands with classic silent films and creating new art out of these two completely separate pieces of art, combining them and creating something new, creating content in my room from our little independent cinema to give to other independent cinemas to show, to create new audiences, because this is for people who love cinema, but it's also for music fans. It's basically a hybrid cinema rock concert experience. And so before Taylor Swift, had her big concert, which played in drive-ins and movie theaters, 2 years before, I was working on my own music-related content, original content that could be eventized, because that's the other thing about our industry right now is most people are staying home and waiting for the movies to come out on streaming. That was the other thing that was the writing on the wall during the pandemic. Streaming, all the movies that were new were coming out on streaming within 2 to 4 weeks of it being in theaters. So the idea of creating content that you could only see in a cinema, and that wasn't just for the people that are going to go to a cinema anyway, it's for people that might not normally choose to go to a cinema because they could watch it at home or because they don't like going out to the movies. But everybody likes a unified music experience. And this was a way of creating a music experience that could be doubled and tripled and quadrupled and sent out to other cinemas around the country. And that's what we pulled off. It was basically me creating the films, from making deals with the bands. I created some demos of each of the movie pairings with the albums that I wanted to use, and I sent demos to each of the bands. And of course, these were all my favorite bands. And so it was amazing that within a couple weeks of me sending it to the management wrote back saying, the band thinks this is super cool. What do you need for us to make this happen for you? And we love that you're not just doing this for your cinema. We love that you're doing it even more so for your peers' cinemas, for independent cinemas, that this might be a boost. This could be a boost if cinemas take hold of it, make it their own, program it, give it a shot, give fans a chance to notice it and come to it. We could build a whole new audience that will empower independent cinemas and create new revenue for them that they didn't even know was possible, because it's a whole new category of entertainment that they can show in their cinema. And I'm incredibly proud of that. And I, of course, couldn't have done it without the band's approvals and blessings, but also a number of people who really encouraged me to, they said, this is a good idea, Josh. You should run with this. You should do this. So while running the Blue Starlight and keeping this going, I basically started a whole new business called Silent Syncs, where I produce, directed, and post-production these films in order to make available to cinemas.
That's quite the journey.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting how I think COVID changed a lot of things, but it made a lot of new innovations.
Yeah.
COVID turned completely to new innovations. So myself, I couldn't think about something like you can create this content and this merge them become a new content or a new art that people can start exploring. And so I'm thinking about the content creators out there. So what is your message to the content creators out there?
That's a great question. So I always imagined that Silent Sinks was sort of a proof of concept, because if I, who am not an official content creator, content creators that create content for the internet, that is a whole huge industry now that came out of nowhere. But those people can do this too, especially now that I've sort of created a template for how to take original content, get it into distribution, and create a chain to where it can go out to independent cinemas. But I mean, there's so many incredibly talented content creators, YouTubers, TikTokers, that could create, a 60, 70 minute program that is appealing enough to be distributed to movie theaters. And again, that's part of the whole idea. It doesn't just have to be independent cinemas creating content that then could go to movie theaters. There's a whole new possible industry of content creators creating programming that would be so appealing because they're very creative. They can think of something that could have a 60 or 70 minute running time that would be so appealing that people would leave their houses to go to a cinema to watch it instead of just watching it at home on their laptop. And so to me, this is sort of the beginning of the idea and the proof of concept, and I'm hoping that some content creators out there see the journey of how I created this and how this works, and they're coming out in movie theaters because I worked with I have a great distributor that totally got what I was trying to do and came on board to help get it into cinemas. And we now have over 30 states, over 150 cinemas, over 300 screenings in the United States starting on October 4th. So more than half the country has a city in their state where this is playing. And the other thing is, these will never be on streaming services. They are for cinemas, and they have a 1-year lifespan that they can be played. So if one of these Silent Sinks is popular at a cinema, they could choose to run it for a whole year. There's no off button, like there are with, off button because it's gone to streaming and it's become a dead title because of that, or because it becomes out of circulation, or people are just tired of it. So it's really cool. It turns original content into something I think that's far more valuable than what I feel a lot of movies that go straight to streaming, I feel it does devalue them. It's like, oh, okay, I can just watch it on my phone. But when it's just offered in a cinema, then it becomes a piece of art that you can compare to going to see something in a museum, So I am excited at the idea that at some point some well-known content creator is going to be like, this is a great idea. I'm going to create something meant for movie theaters,
Wow. I'm happy I asked that question because I hope to bring on board other content creators.
Yeah.
And I hope this becomes a new venture for these content creators out there trying to see what's the next thing, what's the next content to create.
Well, and how much fun would it be to be a content creator and be like, how can I take what I do, what's popular on the internet, and create something meant for movie theaters?
Exactly.
That is a great challenge. That is a great, exciting thing to try and experiment with. It was for me when I created Silent Sinks, and in my little home office, editing the movies with the soundtracks. It was empowering to realize I'm creating something in my little room that's going to be in movie theaters. It was an incredibly empowering realization.
Wow. Yeah. So that means that in terms of funds, it doesn't consume a lot of funds, right? Like you don't need a lot of starting capital.
Right. Well, that's the other thing. You don't need a big production to make something like the proof of concept I did, which is taking basically found footage and doing something different with it, you know? There's so much found footage out there. That's one avenue that content creators could use. They could use found footage and put their own personal brand on it and make it really entertaining, you know? They could bring famous musicians that they look up to on board to create new music for that content that fans of that band can only see in the movie theater with their distributed piece of art, you know? So there's so much that can be done. And I mean, I did it on basically no budget, just with like what I had in my savings account. But some content creators have a lot of money, you know, and they're spending like the same amount that you'd spend making a feature film, making their content. So imagine if they use some of that money to create more of a long form piece that could then be distributed to movie theaters. Not only would it be good for the content creator, but it would be huge for the movie theaters. And that's the thing, we're losing movie theaters, you know? Drive-ins, although new ones have been opening over the last 5 to 10 years, they're still closing in other places. Independent cinemas, whether or not they want to admit it or not, some of them are doing fine, but a lot of them, every month is the struggle just to get by, and they're just used to that struggle, and they accept it. But like, imagine if like a content creator put that money into creating content for an independent cinema chain or circuit, and then it was shown in movie theaters instead of online. Now, of course, the content creators could do it differently than me. They could have like a 3-month theatrical window where it's in cinemas, but then they could still release it online, and it'll be all the easier for them because they already have the distribution online. So really, it's just a matter of creating something with a slightly more epic vision, and then adding in some elements like the music and other well-known entities that will intrigue people to go to the cinema to see their work.
Yeah, thank you so much. I can't get enough. Like I can't get enough of your ideas, and I hope when this new window is wide open to other content creators, you'll be called the father of...
I would love nothing more than to have inspired that, yes.
Definitely.
And for people to call me up and say, help me do this, you know, give me some advice, you know, because I learned so much over the last 3 years making this happen, because nobody's done anything quite like this before. But it's funny because like, I got the tools to learn how to do this and to get over these challenges from running a little drive-in movie theater for the last 15 years. Like the skills were all, you know, bootstrap skills, you know, you pull up your boots and, you know, whether it's muddy or whether it's windy, you put a show on. And so that same, that same gusto or whatever is, I think, what gave me the confidence to make Silent Sinks happen.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's close here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And of course, we shall put your website and your details for those who are interested to see how the project is, or they can come to your streaming.
They can go to silentsinks.com. We're on social media. BlueStarlightAustin.com is for the drive-in.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, so the first Silent Sink is Radiohead with Nosferatu. And the second Silent Sync film is REM paired with Buster Keaton's Sherlock Jr. And of course, these are two of my favorite bands I grew up listening to, and both of them saw the demos that I created of the content that I imagined in my head could be, new original content for cinemas that we could eventize and turn into event cinema. And they all wrote back saying that they thought it was really cool and that I should go ahead and do it. So the other bands are Pearl Jam and the Pixies, and They Might Be Giants, and a really great international DJ named Amon Tobin. And those are all different films